Have you ever wondered what it's like to walk in the shoes of an executive? I asked two of my close friends who were very senior executives in two different organizations. One was private, one was public. And now they've both left those organizations and they are running their own business. I'm super excited for you to meet them. They're going to share their wisdom on looking back and what they've learned from that and what it was like to make that shift. They'll tell you a little bit about them when we get started, but I'm super excited to allow you to be in this very intimate conversation. Welcome to How to Get What You Want. This podcast is for driven women ready to claim their goals and navigate their careers with clarity and confidence. Join me as we explore real stories, tools, and strategies to help you steer your career exactly where you want to go. Let's get started on helping you get what you want. I'm so excited to have both of you here because I have so much deep respect for each of you, and you have such a different lens on the industry and leadership and just being at the executive level. So, why don't we just start out just to give a little color to our listeners? Why don't you tell a little bit about yourself so they know kind of the lens that you're speaking from? Jennifer, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you want to start?
I will start. I'm Jennifer Bergman. I've been a financial executive for over 35 years. 25 years were in the telecommunications industry. So I worked for Cox and UPN, and now I'm one of my fractional CFO clients is a small telecom in Iowa that I'm helping. That's a FELEC and an ILEC. So I have had a blast working in the telecom industry, so it's fun to be back with two telecom executives here today.
I'm so glad. And then the other Jay, Josh, tell us about you.
Yeah, I'm Josh Seiden. I have been running engineering organizations in the cable space for about 20 years, and I've been in the industry for over 30 years. I started at TCI and went through the TCI AT&T broadband Comcast transition. And now I'm doing fractional CTO work, strategic advisory work, still doing some work in the telecom space, but branching out into other spaces as well. And happy to be here.
Awesome. The reason I brought you all here today is because I thought it was really interesting. You both came from big companies, one private company, one public company. You were in the executive ranks in leadership, a lot of visibility, a lot of impact. And I thought it was just interesting. And now you're both solopreneurs. And so I know there's a lot of people that are where you used to be and wonder what it's like on the other side. And I think that also now that you can kind of speak openly, I want to look back on what did that feel like to be that leader with that impact in those roles. So I thought we'd first look back and think about when you think about yourself as that leader for those years in that big, complex corporate environment. I want you to think about, and I'll start with you, Josh. When you look back on your career, what move do you wish you would have made sooner? And you can answer that anyway.
I think, Susie, it's a couple different moves, and but they're all of the same flavor. I think
Mm.
one of I started out in the cable industry pretty young, only a year out of college. And so I was always very ambitious and really, always focused on moving forward in the organization and taking on more responsibility. And I always knew at the very beginning I wanted to manage teams. And I think for me, the best success I had was not always when I left for the best job. The best success I had was when I left for the best people.
Hmm.
And what I would say is for me, I think I had a couple moves that I waited a little too long to go work for the right people.
Hmm.
And I always felt that when I was really meshing with somebody who was my manager, I excelled even more. And so there's probably a couple moves that if I could have, I would have done a little bit earlier, but I kind of held on a little too long for whatever reason. So for me, if I were to go back, I would have followed the right people quicker.
Hmm. So for somebody listening, it's when you really connect with somebody and trust somebody, or you learning from them, make that
Yeah.
sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. Make it sooner. Even there were a few times in my career where I had multiple opportunities, whether within TCI or AT&T or Comcast. And if two jobs are equal, or even if one job is a little bit cooler, or for whatever
Mhm.
reason, if another job has the best people, I would have gone quicker to the people.
Yeah, I love that advice. And so if people are hitting their head against the wall because they don't have that connection with their boss, look
Yeah.
for another person that's going to be a better match. Doesn't mean they're a bad person, but a better
That's
match
right.
for you.
That's right. Somebody that meshes better with you
Hmm.
and puts you in a better position where you can really be yourself and stretch your legs a little bit.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Jennifer? And then tell us what do you reflect on for you?
Yeah, I'm probably similar to Josh, but maybe a little bit different of a take. I started in telecom in 2000, and that there was such, growth at that point was just off the charts because, we were getting into telecom and digital, and internet was just, going like gangbusters. And so I got to experience that heavy growth. But, 10, 15 years later, we're starting to hemorrhage all those, certainly on the telephone and the video side of the business. And I think I loved the culture at Cox, and I had some of my best bosses were there, and it was just such a neat company to work for. But it's also, those last few years working for them were certainly that period of time. I call it the shun period of my time because it was reorganization, optimization, transformation. Like if there was one more shun word that we were going to name, some sort of reduction in workforce. And so for me, it was so hard to want to leave because I loved that company so much. But after 3 or 4 of those, reductions and gap closure and downsizings, it's just not very fulfilling. It's hard to be creative and innovative and forward thinking when you're surrounded by that. So I probably was kind of the opposite of I really loved the team and the company and just found it really hard to want to break away.
Interesting. And I can't but say right now, people are listening that are in the shun, right now. There's so much, not just in the industry, but beyond.
Right.
So like, how do you survive that, or how do you make those choices for yourself to get through that time?
It's difficult because you feel you feel secure, you've got this, you love what you're doing, you love your team and the company and the culture and the salary and the benefits and all those things
Yeah.
that come. But I think it's just kind of really grounding yourself and kind of looking out like this isn't sustainable. Like what are we doing here, folks? Like this isn't
Yeah.
sustainable. And so it feels really risky to make that move.
And so, Jennifer, when you look back to, was there a time that you did a good move and you negotiated well for yourself? What are you proud of?
Yeah, I have done a couple stints in private equity, and I will say probably in the second instance of that, I was given some equity in the company, but I wasn't personally able to invest in the company. And my peers were there at the formation, so they were able to invest personally. And that was important to me. I didn't want to be the odd man out. Everybody else has personally made an investment in the company, but not me.
Yeah.
And I believed in what the company was doing, and I believed in my skills. I knew I was going to be successful with, what they were asking me to do. And so I held pretty firm, like I personally want to make an investment. And My boss went to bat for me. And so I personally was able to invest in the company, and that has been pretty lucrative for me.
Because you were the one that wasn't getting it. How did you get beyond the imposter syndrome, or how did you get the courage to say, me too?
I think because my first stint in private equity was almost just the opposite. Like I didn't ask for, I had to make my investment, the first day that I started at that company. And, I was in the middle of relocating. So I own two houses at the same time. And so I'm cash strapped. I've got two houses, and they were asking me to make that investment right away. And I didn't want to ruffle feathers. I tried to push back, but they're like, nope, you got to make it right away when you start. And I was like, I'm not going to make a big deal about this. And so I invested a lesser amount. And, that really hurt me in the end, because that too was a successful venture. And I lost out on, not being able to invest as much as I should have or could have if I wasn't, cash strapped with the two houses. So I think that really gave me the courage the second time to say, I'm not doing this again a second time. Like, I definitely, want to make sure I'm rewarded for all the effort that I'm going to put in. So I think that is what really gave me that courage.
I love how experience builds on itself, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why your story is so important to people that are listening, because hopefully they'll, live vicariously through you and then have the courage to ask that as well. How about you, Josh? What was a time where you negotiated well for yourself?
For me, it's sort of a different kind of negotiation. For me, there was a time when I was managing a very large engineering group, and it had run its course for me for a little bit. And there was a new organization that was being formed within the company, and their mission, like, just resonated with me. And the work really excited me. And for me, the negotiation really was like, I forced them to hire me into this group. I literally gave them no choice. And for me, it was an opportunity I saw that I really wanted. And it wasn't a financial negotiation. It was, you have to hire me. And I sort of forced my way in that door into this new group, which it was a group all on the East Coast. And I was the only person in Denver. And at first there was a lot of friction there. And I just, I didn't allow that to even be an option. So that was probably the one move for me. Financially, I probably left some on the table, but that wasn't a factor then. It was, I really wanted to do this work. You can't hire anyone else.
It's so interesting that Jennifer talked about kind of like a scarcity mindset. Like I didn't have a lot of options, or I didn't have a strapped, I'll take her words, strapped for cash. Where your example is, you love the work, the people, like you could just hear your excitement in that.
Yeah.
And you didn't really care. You weren't looking for the bag of money. But it's so interesting how our mindset, like, tell me, both of you, let's talk about that mindset. How do you shift that mindset for you in those times that are important to think differently?
For me, it was, honestly, I don't know. It just happened. It was excitement. It was,
Yeah.
I always played the long game.
Hmm.
Always. I never ever played the short game. And so for me, what I saw was this new work fit me in a way that nothing else. I just knew I had to be there for the long game to really go well. And I knew, I truly believed that being in the right place, the growth, the slope of that growth would increase. And it did. And
Yeah.
so for me, it was keeping my eye on the long game always, and not settling for short wins.
You talked about leadership as something that was your goal, and it's
Yeah.
interesting that you're talking about the long game. Talk a little bit about. I want you both to talk a little bit about what you learned about yourself as a leader that you couldn't have learned in a book or in a course. What'd you learn about leadership?
The one thing I learned, and despite the fact that I've been in sort of one family of companies most of my career, I've been in all sorts of organizations. And the one thing I learned for me is the tone of the leader filters all the way down to the whole organization. And being a good leader, I truly believe it's completely selfless. And if you are selfless about it and the tone is always set and there's clarity and people are mission driven and they know what they're doing and they believe that as a leader, you're thinking of their best interests, you can build an amazing organization. And I saw so many different leaders throughout my career. And for me, it was really that tone of that leader. A chaotic leader creates a chaotic organization. A strong leader who's mission driven creates a mission driven organization. And so I always took pieces and parts of everybody that I worked for and kind of implemented the parts that I liked and the parts that I didn't, and did not implement the parts I didn't like.
I love that. It's like your portfolio of leadership.
I had good leaders and not so good leaders, but everybody had good pieces and everybody had pieces that didn't fit me. So I just kind of learned as I went and said, I'll take a little bit of that and a little bit of that.
Yeah, I love that because they always say you don't leave a company, you leave a boss. So I think that I love that example, Josh. I think my leadership lesson was just early in my career, just advancing because of the results. I could get outcomes and drive results and, was getting promoted because of that. And then that shift of realizing that's not sustainable. Like if you really want to get things done, it's through your relationships and your connections. And I think really figuring out that you're really moving the organization forward. It's happening in the coffee or the lunch or the cocktail, outside of work. And whether that's within your company or just the other people you're meeting in the industry and you're networking and you're making all these connections and you're getting these ideas. And so, for me, that leadership lesson I kind of had to learn the hard way was just the real thing that's moving the company forward isn't, kind of like working through your lunch and looking down. It's really kind of looking out and really connecting with others in the company.
Yeah. You both made me think about like when I first started, I think I was self-focused because I was trying to figure it out. And as I got older and more seasoned, it was okay to not worry about the impact if I give them this information or do this. It's more about when you put the business first, it allows you to maneuver, but you can't always see that. Do you know what I mean? You don't always see that early in your career. And I wish I would have unlocked that earlier.
Yeah, definitely.
I remember my first management position ever. It was probably 26 years ago, probably 2000. Probably 2000. I was managing people at the time that were twice my age in some
Wow.
cases. And to your point, Susie, like I remember just always being so conscious about, well, if I say this,
Yeah.
what's it going to do? Or, they're going to be mad at me. And that was a really difficult transition. And yeah, I think you're right. Like over time, you become so much more comfortable with making decisions that affect other people. But yeah, that first management role for me it was hard and exhausting.
Because it's mental
You're
math all the
constantly
time.
thinking, yeah.
Yeah. It's those moments where people give you great feedback. And I remember early on saying to my friend John, oh, I hate managing people because it was like frontline employees. I had to make sure they were on time. And he goes, it shows. And I was like, that was like the moment that made me realize it's not just about me, it's about them and seeing it from their perspective too. But,
Yeah.
thanks, John. And so when you think about like, there's not, it's not like a straight line when you think about leadership and you have your team. There's this ocean of politics and people that are influencing things. When you guys both look at and look back on, any company is going to have politics just because when you're not talking one-on-one to somebody, it's basically a big game of telephone in some regards, right? So tell us how do you frame politics and maybe even share a story or a reflection on how did you maneuver that or what advice would you give to somebody?
I think that I always tried to seek to understand. I had a peer who navigated Lynn. If she would get challenged in a meeting by a boss or a peer, she would just say, help me understand why you feel that way. Or can you give me an example of that? And would just totally like diffuse the situation. And she just was so savvy at navigating the politics in our company. And I just started imitating what she was doing. Like she's getting results, she's, diffusing the situation. And I just stole the page out of her book. And still to this day, when I feel myself kind of coming unhinged, like my code word is more like, tell me more about that. Like share more about that, because I'm trying to like not let it be on my face. So I think just, for people navigating, like who's doing it well and take a page out of their book and who's not and, stay away from that.
That's really good advice. And even you said too, is even recognizing that moment that you're becoming unhinged, as you said, so that you can, and I love that, have a question or something so that you can get hinged while they're
Right.
answering, so you can get your composure back. We can use that in every day, not just in a corporate environment. With kids, would you agree, Jennifer?
Yeah, no, I come unhinged there. That probably doesn't work so much. They're going to hear mama's voice. Like I'm totally doing my mom voice.
How about you, Josh? Tell us a little bit about how you reflect on the politics.
There's a difference between politics and drama. They get confused. I learned this lesson a lot when I was going through one of the many huge cable company mergers. During that merger, there was a lot of politics, and the politics was really about who's still going to be here, who's going to do the job, how are they going to do the job. And the drama was around the drama created by all that. And I had a manager who really kind of shepherded me and my team through that merger. And he was the one who always kept, pointing us to the politics is about how are we going to do our job?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to do the job? And how are we going to do it well?
Mm-hmm.
And the drama, let's let that be somebody else's problem. And so for me, and it was really hard to do that as a relatively young person in the company, but I had to learn to try to let go of the drama. I'm not saying I didn't at times get caught up in it, but once you let go of the drama and you can focus on the really important part of the politics, and that's how does the job get done?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to work with these people. And so that for me, it was really trying to separate those two things.
Yeah. And I love that example of that leader that brought everybody back to what's really important.
Yeah.
Because that's like
Yeah.
training people to not pay attention to the drama. And without it, it's hard not to focus on, it's kind of fun to focus on the drama.
And it's
Or
inevitable.
you get sucked into it, right?
Yeah, it's inevitable, right? I mean, it's always going to happen.
You always have your Dan. I always talk about Dan, the person that's always trying to take advantage. And they're always there. It's just your decision on how you're going to react to
Right.
that person or that situation. Yeah.
Right.
And it's hard too, because corporate politics gets worse when there's pressure in the business and when things are uncertain and downsizing is happening. And so it almost needs to become more conscious during those times so that you can go, I need to intentionally look at what's best for the business. And that's
Yeah.
hard to do.